Hi, Adam. Good morning. Thanks so much for taking time to join us on Niaga Spotlight.
No worries. Nice to be here.
Fantastic. So, Adam, let's get started off by you telling me something a little exciting. Rimba Watch's newly launched Forest Tracker platform. What's it all about? And why is this such an important time that it's also being introduced?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the Forest Tracker is the combination of about more than 2 years of data collection by Rimba Watch. Basically, so yeah, we published this last week, and this is a one-of-a-kind interactive platform that allows users to track past and projected future deforestation in Malaysia through an interactive map which is published on our website. So you can go to it now at rimbawatchmy.com. And basically what the map does is it shows you which areas of forests are going to be cut down based on concessions we have identified and which areas have been cut down in the past. And it also shows you what the concession is for. So like it shows you that this area is going to be cut down for timber plantations, this area is going to be cut down for, like, in some cases, even a shopping mall and so on. This is notable because this is the only database in Malaysia that displays this kind of data on deforestation in a single place. And, we have literally hundreds of concessions in our database, which covers millions of hectares of forest. And we hope that in the following months, we're going to publish a report that shows an analysis of these deforestation trends, which will be, I think, very enlightening on some of the key trends on deforestation in recent years.
Exactly. Now, casting the net a little bit wider when it comes to discussion, right, Adam? So deforestation, of course, we're looking at immense tracts of forest all across Peninsula as well as Sabah and Sarawak, East Malaysia, right? But at the same time, I think we are seeing more immediate consequences of deforestation, such as an adult tiger that was found dead in Bentong just yesterday. The big cat had been killed by a vehicle as it was crossing the highway. So this is also the third such death of a big cat in just the past 6 months. What are these trends in particular pointing towards when it comes to forest conservation and the habitat of our wildlife being encroached upon?
Okay, so basically what this tracker is showing is it's showing the reality of deforestation. Because right now we've got quite a large data gap about what's really driving deforestation in Malaysia. And so when people talk about deforestation, they may be misidentifying the core problem as, for example, illegal logging or even like palm oil. So narrowing it down a bit further, while palm oil still does drive some deforestation, the tracker identifies timber plantations, which is the growing practice of replacing natural forest in forest reserves, i.e. hutan simpenan kekal, with monoculture, such as rubberwood plantations or acacia. And this practice is currently the main driver of deforestation in Malaysia today. And this is not an illegal practice. This is completely government sanctioned. And this program has even received allocations in previous years' national budgets. This is basically, we have identified the core problem. And in terms of timber plantations, there have been instances where I've looked at EIAs for timber plantations, environmental impact assessments, have found that timber plantations are located in known tiger habitats. For example, there's one project in Hutan Simpan Jerangau in Terengganu involving 5,000 hectares of a timber plantation conversion of natural forest. And the EIA identified, tiger tracks in the project area. So, we've got here the root cause of deforestation, and we really need to take some concrete action right now to stop it, not just from, the context of our current heat wave, the climate crisis, but I mean, these are all interconnected with biodiversity. And, the recent death of a tiger in Bentong really shows the urgency of addressing this right now.
Exactly. And I mean, given the fact that we basically have 150 odd only documented tigers remaining all around Malaysia, one would think that having it on the record that these areas are also tiger habitats would prevent them or actually exclude them completely from being reforested, so to speak, by timber plantations. Could we delve a little bit deeper, Adam, into why it is that timber plantations in particular, or even palm oil, ought not to be considered canopy cover, and what the actual dangers are of such monocropping for the environment itself?
Yeah, well, I mean, palm oil is not really considered forest cover, under Malaysia's definitions, but timber plantations are. And the core reason for this is because Malaysia follows the Food and Agriculture Organization's definition of forest, which is extremely loose. And it involves, for example, it says explicitly in the FAO's definition that rubberwood plantations are allowed to be counted as forest.
Mhm.
And so building on this definition, Malaysia defines forest based on what we found Malaysia to be doing as the legal land use. So anything that's legally gazetted as forest is forest. And so forest reserves, all of forest reserves are counted as forest cover. But, as we found, millions of hectares of forest reserves are not going to be forest cover anymore because it's going to be converted to monoculture plantations. And, the Malaysian rainforest supports hundreds, if not thousands of species of tree per hectare, and monoculture supports a single species, right? So this has far lower provisions to, for example, ecosystem services. The conversion exposes communities to floods, to landslides, siltation of water sources, and we are in a climate crisis. The temperatures have risen 1.1 degrees since before the industrial era. Forests cool down locations. For example, a recent report found that when you deforest an area, the local temperature rise is 4.5 degrees Celsius. And this rise can be felt as far as 6 kilometers away from the core area. So we don't have time anymore to waste and to continue cutting down our forests on the pretext of timber plantations. And again, as I said, concrete action has to be taken now, specifically on timber plantations.
Precisely. Rimba Watch has also mentioned quite recently that Malaysia is already set to lose 2.3 million hectares of forests. They have already been earmarked for deforestation. What would be some perhaps strategic approaches? Let's say if government of the day actually becomes sensitized enough to connect this back to the wider extreme heat that everybody has been living under, which is also projected to be coming back towards the later parts of May once again.
Yeah. Well, I would like to just note here, again, the climate crisis is a very interconnected issue. And so we need a very cohesive strategy towards mitigating future heat waves and adapting to current heat waves. I'd like to address the role of other drivers of climate change as well in this discussion in driving the current heat wave, namely that of fossil fuels, which contribute 75% of global emissions. So complementing our forest tracker map, we also published our future emissions database recently, which tracks new fossil fuel projects in Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei. And what we found is 70 proposed fossil fuel projects, which amounts to billions of tons of CO2 emissions, based on our estimations. And I'd like to bring in here a metric called the mortality cost of carbon, which is the number of excess human deaths estimated to occur by 2100 as a result of extreme heat exposure, based on the cumulative impact of a single ton of carbon. And so based on our database, the emissions from just 1 out of 70 fossil fuel projects in Malaysia will cause 35,000 excess deaths from heat by 2100. So again, this is just 1 out of 70 projects. So, we cannot talk about mitigating heat waves without considering the interconnected dimensions of climate change. And we have to note that Malaysia is not just a major source of global tropical deforestation, but also of fossil fuel emissions. And so, in relation to timber plantations and fossil fuels, Malaysia has used a narrative that timber plantations are a way to restore degraded forests and that methane gas is a cleaner fossil fuel. But instead of peddling these narratives to mitigate future heat waves such as this, we feel that Malaysia must honor its international climate commitments now by phasing out timber plantations and fossil fuel expansions as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Points really well made over there, Adam. I hear you clearly. Now, moving into there, perhaps to a more urban dimension. Now, any thoughts on the fact that this past week, multiple trees in different locations around Malaysia were uprooted? They fell onto roads, causing damages and also a death. Now, DBKL, KL City Hall at least, has been instructed to take immediate action by cutting down 28 of the most high-risk trees around the city. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim also responded by saying that 100 new trees would be planted for every tree that has been cut down due to being high risk. Now, let's talk about the impact that less tree or canopy cover even within our urban centers and how that's going to immediately impact us and how basically we're way behind, but planting maybe 100 more for each cut down tree is somewhat of a start.
Yeah, well, again, the Kuala Lumpur suffers heavily from the urban heat island effect, and so if you look at some of the data, the center of Kuala Lumpur and all the urban areas around KL are 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees warmer in terms of air temperature to surrounding greener areas, and so planting more trees and just greening up the urban areas in general is absolutely essential to adapting to the impacts of climate change. For example, if we're looking at a 3-degree, based on current policies, we're looking at a 3.2-degree temperature rise by 2100. And so if you look at KL right now, KL is currently about average 32, 33 degrees in the daytime. If it's going to be 36 degrees in the daytime, this pretty much puts a lot of KL in an almost unlivable state. And as I mentioned earlier, green spaces can reduce temperatures by up to 3.4 degrees. So to ensure that Kuala Lumpur continues to be livable as we enter the Anthropocene, so to speak, we really need to increase the greening of the city. And we cannot just rely on air conditioning. Air conditioning it's convenient, but it exacerbates the problem, not just in terms of energy use, but just the heat that air conditioning units generate is significant.
Yeah, definitely. And perhaps what could be other proactive approaches other than tree planting, which of course good, but it's going to take a while, a couple of decades at least, until those saplings grow into trees that provide enough urban shade, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, you can plant trees, but you can't necessarily plant a forest. And Malaysia's rainforests are millions of years old. Planting trees is not a substitute for cutting down primary rainforests. And so our initial goal should be to preserve our forest cover at the maximum forest extent. Currently we have this commitment to maintain forest cover at 50%. The data is varying. Some puts our canopy cover at about 59%, some says about 53, 54. Some says it's already gone below 50%. But the point is, this 50% commitment leaves a lot of leeway for future deforestation. And we need to preserve maximum possible forest cover and then start talking about tree planting.
Point well noted. Adam, thank you so much for sharing your insights. That was absolutely actionable. And we hope that the relevant authorities are actually going to pay heed now that we've actually seen some of those impacts directly unfold before our eyes in the week or so. Thanks a lot, Adam.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Nik. How are you? Thank you so much for taking time to be on Niaga Spotlight today.
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me, Ms. Termina, in this program.
Fantastic. So Dr. Nik, could we get started off by you sharing with us from your perspective as a senior lecturer with the Faculty of Forestry and Environment at UBM? So what are the economic and social costs of extreme heat, and what kind of impacts have we already seen most recently, not just across the region, but also in Malaysia, where we actually did have 3 deaths on record directly due to extreme heat?
Okay, before I answer that question, I think I need to distinguish a bit what is between economic and social costs of heat wave. Okay, when we are talking about economic cost of heat waves, it means it's the direct financial cost that is associated with heat wave. Meanwhile, the social cost of heat waves is the indirect financial costs associated with heat wave. Okay, all of these costs can be incurred by the economic sectors and also by the households. Okay, we go back to the economic cost of the heat waves. Okay, so about the economic cost of heat wave, the most prevalence or significance one that we can see right now is the increasing of electricity bill. Okay, we cannot deny it, right? Either in economic sector or also in household level. Okay, for economic sectors such as the tourism sector, okay, the economic cost would be the reduced number of tourism activity due to the lacking numbers of tourists. So there will be the incurred economic cost there. For another example, in construction sector, okay, where the workers needs to limit their time outdoor due to the heat wave, so that it will reduce the work productivity, so that will extend the project lifespan, and then it will incur some costs in construction sector. Okay, we go back to the social costs. Social cost is quite different. Yeah, from the economic cost because it's associated indirectly with heat wave. For example, the health deterioration in terms of physical health, maybe due to heat stroke, or the deterioration of mental health that are caused by anxiety, distressful from the discomfort from working in the heat wave. So all the medical expenses incurred due to these physical and mental health distress, okay, these are counted as social costs. Okay, so basically social costs are often overlooked. Yeah, so in this case, what we can see right now, the pattern here, we can see the pattern for sure, the significant value of increasing electricity bill, right? You can see yourself, yeah, Mr. Mina. And then about in the agricultural sector, in the heat wave, it will definitely affect the agricultural sector. We know when we're talking about agriculture, we are depending a lot about water supply and the in the heat.
Dr. Nik, if intervene over there to actually point out that aside from the increasing costs of, for example, electricity, which is directly related to us using more air conditioning. So that, of course, also has an environmental cost due to the carbon dioxide produced. But you were mentioning agriculture. Let's go into the fact that most of our agricultural produce in Malaysia is also produced by smallholders. In your perspective, what are some areas where the government could perhaps better support the adaptability and resilience for smallholders so that extreme weather events such as droughts or even they are better able to manage it?
Okay, in terms of agriculture, yeah, we have quite numbers of smallholders in Malaysia, right? So during this heat extreme, what the government can do is to give them financial and also social support. Okay, easily for financial support, what the government can do, the government can give them financial assistance in terms of giving them subsidies or offer them low interest rate whenever they want to invest. That is where the government can help the smallholders. Okay, in social support, what the government can do, first, they can offer them capacity building or offer them training. For that, the government can introduce the smallholder with crop heat resistant, okay, and also how to effectively do the plantation, and also to introduce the smallholders the best agriculture practice, considering in this heat wave we have water scarcity, how they can adapt with the water scarcity with their agricultural process.
Sure. Now, are there any regional breakthroughs, perhaps, Dr. Nik, that you have noticed or been keeping track of that perhaps our Malaysian agricultural sector could take inspiration from or easily adapt since we have similar climates, especially across Southeast Asia?
Okay, if we are talking about the breakthrough, about the invention of crop with heat resistant, we have research institution in Malaysia. We call it as MARDI that are centralizing into research about agricultural products. Okay, about MARDI, they have several breakthrough, with crop invention that can withstand disease with better quality. For example, MD2 pineapple, the harum manis, and as well in rice varieties. As far as I know, MARDI has come up with the invention of rice varieties that can withstand disease. And these rice varieties have already distributed to farmers where all of them are gain profits from the selling of the rice. But in terms of heat resistant crop, it is still under development. The first variants of rice that is developed by MARDI that has the component of heat resistant already developed in 2013, but not yet is distributed to the farmers because it is hard. Yeah, it is hard to make the heat resistant.
So the commercialization is still in the making, but from there, moving on into a much bigger picture, Dr. Nik, do you feel there are any other proactive measures, policies, or maybe even guidelines which can be made by the government in anticipation of a hotter climate in the near future? Also, the current heavy rains that we're experiencing, even in the Klang Valley, it is presumed that the cycle will soon end within the next 1 to 2 weeks and will be back in the cycle of the relentless heat that we were just experiencing.
Okay, when we are talking about government policy, right now we are under 12 Malaysian plan, yeah, and under 12 Malaysian plan, we have supporting focused policies about energy, about forestry, about environment, yeah, so that we can achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. And under the 12 Malaysian plan as well, the government is drafting, yeah, new policies, for example, the framework on carbon trading and also the framework to introduce renewable energy resources in Malaysia. Focusedly, we are talking about solar energy.
Absolutely. So I think when we're looking forward to 2050, at the same time, it's also important for local and individual mitigation measures, such as, of course, recycling more, and at the same time being cognizant of what kind of energy expenditure we're involved in. Thanks, Dr. Nik. Could we move on into you perhaps highlighting to us how can also extreme weather events like extreme heat disproportionately impact women, especially in an economic lens?
Okay, when we are talking how the extreme heat will affect the women, I'm not worried for those women who are working in professional sector, yeah, because they are working indoors, yeah, with comfort. But my most concern is among women who are working in informal sector. For example, in the street as a street vendor or as an owner of market store, okay, where they are exposed to the heat because they are working outdoors. Similarly, with agricultural sector, okay, we are developing country. Yeah, that means we are still depending on women, yeah, to grow our agricultural sector. So they are exposed to this heat wave. Okay, my concern is that if they are exposed and they are physically or mentally challenged, I mean distressed, okay, has the heat stroke, okay, though they cannot continue with their work, so that it will affect their income. Okay, so in this term, we need help. Okay, we need to help this vulnerable group of women, yeah, who will get impacted from the heat wave. The help not necessarily comes from the government. Yes, government should do something like to come up with a facility, yeah, so that they have better place to do the marketing in as a vendor street, and as well the community-based organization is also can help these women. Okay, perhaps to come up with delivery system that they can sell their products from home, and they because we have WhatsApp or whatsoever, right? So we can do that. They can do that from home lah, to avoid all the significant consequences from the heat wave from being outdoor.
And thank you for highlighting the fact that the digital economy also plays a part in helping to mitigate some of the impacts of climate on vulnerable farmers, especially women. Still on that same topic, Dr. Nik. Now, recently, Microsoft has announced its commitment to investing 2.2 billion USD on cloud and AI in Malaysia. Now, looking at the sensitivity of such advanced technological hardware to extreme heat, to what extent do you feel extreme heat is posing a challenge to governments like ours, especially in more tropical weathers, and at the same time, the need to also attract high-tech and high FDI investments?
This heat wave basically definitely will pose challenge towards our government because we need to obtain trust from the investors. That we have stable electricity, we can have that kind of electricity that we can control the temperature. Okay, for this part, there are few alternatives that the governments can do. One of it is that I know the project in Cyberjaya where they have centralized cooling system, where it is good, where it is adaptable and proven working. So the government can adapt and replicate that kind of project. Yeah, the investment is very high, but that's the price that we need to pay to have larger profit in the future. And another strategy that the government can do to obtain trust from investor, maybe we can opt for another energy sources for electricity generation by using solar power generation. We must take opportunity with this heat wave where we have ample of sunlight, or must I say excessive sunlight. Yeah, it is good for solar power generation. I think, yeah, the investment is very high that we need to come up with new power generation plant, but that's the thing that we need to pay. So that will be profitable to our country later on.
Absolutely. It's an investment as much as it is an expense, but more for the medium to long term. Thank you so very much, Dr. Nik Rahimah. Those were some excellent insights looking at extreme heat and mitigation measures over both the medium and long term. Lovely to have you here with us on Niaga Spotlight.